The Real Story of MrBeast. English Listening Practice. Segment 1. The Quiet Kid with a Camera. He was never the loudest kid in class. Not the athletic one, not the popular one, not the one teachers remembered at the end of the school year. He was the quiet boy sitting in the back, half present, half somewhere else, lost in a world most people around him couldn't see. Before the internet knew him as Mr. Beast, before the headlines, the millions, the philanthropy, and the pressure, he was simply Jimmy Donaldson, a shy kid growing up in a small town in North Carolina. A boy who didn't quite fit into the patterns others expected. A boy who would one day reshape YouTube forever, though even he didn't know it yet. His world was simple: his mother, his brother, a handful of close friends, and a bedroom that slowly transformed into his universe. A quiet place crowded with ideas no one else could hear. While other kids dreamed of being firefighters or superheroes, Jimmy dreamed of something strange, something that didn't exist as a real job at the time. He wanted to become a YouTuber, even though almost nobody believed that could ever be a career. But that dream didn't begin with confidence or applause. It began with loneliness, obsession, and a feeling inside him that he was meant for something he couldn't yet name. Even as a child, Jimmy didn't feel comfortable in typical social circles. He often felt anxious, a little different, and unsure how to connect. Where some kids found comfort in sports or parties, Jimmy found it on a computer screen, a place where the world seemed bigger, louder, and more possible. A place where anyone could create something people cared about. When he was around 12 years old, he discovered YouTube, not as a casual viewer, but as someone instantly fascinated by it. It was chaotic, unpredictable, full of creators he had never heard of and ideas he'd never seen. Some videos were ridiculous, some were brilliant, but all of them had one thing in common: they were made by ordinary people. This changed everything. If normal people could build something on YouTube, something funny, exciting, surprising, maybe he could too. He didn't know how, he didn't know when, and he certainly didn't know if he had the courage. But inside him, a fire started burning. It was around this time that Jimmy picked up his mother's old camera. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't new, but to him it felt like a key, a small doorway to a bigger world. He didn't start with big ideas. His first videos were simple. Random gaming clips, commentary, little experiments. No special effects, no studio lights, no big reactions. Just a quiet kid trying to say something into a digital universe where no one was listening yet. He uploaded his first video at age 13. It got maybe 20 views, maybe less. But something strange happened. Instead of discouraging him, those tiny numbers made him more determined. Each view felt like a spark. Someone out there, somewhere, clicked on something he made. Someone cared enough to look. And for a boy who often felt invisible, that meant the world. Jimmy didn't know how to edit properly. He didn't know how to tell stories or design thumbnails. He didn't even understand how the YouTube algorithm worked. But he had something most people never develop: the ability to obsess completely. He watched videos not as entertainment, but as puzzles. What made people click? What made them stay? Why did some videos explode while others disappeared? While other kids played outside or watched TV, Jimmy spent his nights analyzing creators, studying patterns, writing down ideas in notebooks. He didn't know it then, but he was slowly training himself, not in a classroom, not through a teacher, but through pure curiosity. But obsession has a cost. At school, Jimmy still didn't fit in. He wasn't the funny one, the talkative one, or the outgoing one. He struggled academically, especially with subjects that didn't interest him. Teachers thought he was distracted. Students thought he was weird. He felt like a puzzle piece that didn't belong anywhere. His mother, a hard-working single parent, didn't fully understand YouTube. She worried about his future, worried that he was spending too much time online, worried that he was drifting away from the traditional path she hoped he'd follow. And who could blame her? At the time, YouTube wasn't a stable dream. It wasn't even a dream at all. It was just a hobby for kids. But Jimmy wasn't like other kids. He wasn't chasing validation. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing a feeling, that mysterious spark that lit up inside him every time he pressed upload. As he grew older, that spark only intensified. By high school, Jimmy had become obsessed with understanding what makes a video popular. He talked about it constantly, to the few friends he had, to his brother, to anyone who would listen. Most people didn't take him seriously. Some laughed, others just shrugged. But Jimmy didn't care. He felt like he'd found his purpose. His bedroom turned into a miniature studio, though studio might be a generous word. It was messy, cluttered with equipment he could barely afford, cheap microphones, old cameras, random LED lights, wires tangled across the floor. Posters of YouTubers he admired hung beside sticky notes filled with ideas, world record challenges, last to leave wins, extreme endurance. Many of those ideas wouldn't become real videos until years later. But the dreams began in that room. He uploaded consistently, even when it felt pointless. Even when videos got only a few likes. Even when the view count barely crawled past 100. Even when classmates made jokes about his channel. Because deep down, Jimmy wasn't chasing numbers. He was chasing improvement. Every video, even the bad ones, taught him something. Better pacing, better thumbnails, better titles, better editing, better connection. He was learning the language of YouTube long before the world knew his name. But behind the growth was a young boy carrying things he rarely shared. Jimmy often battled loneliness, self-doubt, and the sinking fear that maybe his dream wasn't realistic. Late at night, while staring at the stats on his screen, he questioned whether he was wasting his life chasing something impossible. He didn't have a backup plan. He didn't have a clear future. His whole identity became tied to a dream no one understood. And yet, he couldn't stop. YouTube wasn't just something he did, it was who he was becoming. As he moved into his teenage years, his obsession grew into something even deeper: discipline. He stopped going to parties. He didn't care about dating, sports, or school popularity. He cared about only one thing: making the best videos he possibly could. And while his classmates chased short-term excitement, Jimmy was building long-term mastery without even realizing it. But there was another layer, something darker, quieter, and more hidden. Jimmy struggled with chronic health issues that affected him both physically and mentally. These weren't just small challenges. They were daily battles that made focusing harder and made ordinary life feel heavier. He didn't talk about it much. Maybe he didn't want sympathy. Maybe he didn't want to seem weak. Or maybe he simply accepted it as part of who he was. Whatever the reason, he fought those battles alone. And yet, despite everything, loneliness, illness, self-doubt, lack of support, he kept uploading, kept failing, kept learning, kept dreaming. It's easy to admire the giant numbers MrBeast gets today, The billions of views, the massive giveaways, the enormous project, but none of that makes sense unless you understand this beginning, the quiet kid, the lonely kid, the kid who felt different, misunderstood, invisible. Because that kid, Jimmy Donaldson, was not born famous. He was shaped by thousands of small moments, thousands of failures, thousands of choices to not give up. Every creator has a start. This was his. But the world hadn't seen anything yet, because soon the boy who uploaded videos to almost no audience was about to discover something. Something powerful, something unexpected, something that would take him from obscurity to the edge of a revolution. He didn't know it then, he couldn't have known it, but the next chapter in his life would change everything. Segment 2. The obsession begins. Uploads, algorithms, and failures. When most teenagers were sleeping in on the weekends, Jimmy was already awake, eyes fixed on the screen, headphones on, not playing games but studying something far less glamorous. YouTube analytics. It sounds boring, maybe even pointless. But to him, those numbers were more than stats. They were clues. A map, a code that, if cracked, could turn an unknown teenager with zero connections into someone who could reach the world. By the time he was 15, Jimmy was fully obsessed, not just with making videos, but with understanding why some succeeded and others failed. While most aspiring YouTubers were focused on flashy editing or expensive gear, Jimmy was asking questions no one around him was even thinking about. Why did people click? Why did they stop watching after 30 seconds? What made a thumbnail irresistible? What made a title predictable? His room had become more than just a recording space. It was his lab, his classroom, his battlefield. Stacks of notebooks lined the edges of his desk, each page filled with charts, titles, video ideas, timestamps. If you opened one, you wouldn't find school notes or doodles. You'd find lists like top 10 video structures that hook viewers. What PewDiePie does in the first 5 seconds, what makes people comment, psychology of curiosity. He wasn't guessing, he was studying constantly. He began reverse engineering success. He'd pick viral videos apart frame by frame, trying to understand the rhythm behind the magic. When something worked, he didn't just admire it, he documented it, tested it, improved on it. He watched MrBeast videos before MrBeast existed, because he was building him piece by piece. But obsession, even one driven by passion, rarely leads to instant reward. Jimmy's early uploads were awkward, inconsistent, and sometimes painful to watch. He tried gaming content, commentary, random jokes, let's plays. The audio was bad, the visuals were worse, the energy wasn't always there, and no one, except maybe a few friends and a stranger or two, was watching. Most videos had fewer than 100 views. Some had 10, some had 0. But Jimmy kept uploading. He didn't expect every video to go viral. He didn't even expect most to succeed. His goal was simpler and far more powerful. Each video must be better than the last. And so while other creators gave up after a month, Jimmy pressed on. 10 views became 20, 20 became 50, 50 became 100. Then a small breakthrough. One of his Call of Duty commentary videos suddenly hit a few thousand views. No one knew exactly why, but Jimmy had a theory. He noticed the title had a question in it, and the thumbnail used bold red text. He took notes. Then he replicated it, changed the formula, tried again and again and again. Most of those attempts failed, but every failure taught him something new. This was around 2015. YouTube wasn't what it is today. There weren't clear playbooks. There weren't as many how to grow on YouTube videos. Most creators were still figuring things out themselves. But Jimmy, he was creating his own system from scratch. He didn't care about fame. He didn't even care about money. He cared about mastery. If someone told him he needed to spend 10,000 hours learning YouTube, he would have gladly started the clock. Because even back then, he knew something most people still don't. YouTube isn't luck, it's a skill. And like any skill, it could be trained if you are willing to suffer through the boring parts. Jimmy was willing. He started setting personal challenges. Watch 100 viral videos in a week and take notes. Try 5 thumbnail styles in 5 days. Upload daily for 30 days. Reach 1,000 subscribers in 90 days. He didn't always hit the mark, but the consistency rewired his brain. He stopped seeing failure as failure. He started seeing it as feedback. But outside that digital world, the pressure was growing. His mother, loving but cautious, didn't understand why Jimmy was putting so much time into a channel that barely made money. Teachers were worried about his performance in school. Friends were confused by his single-minded focus. And Jimmy, well, he didn't have answers. All he knew was that he couldn't stop. He didn't want to stop. He'd found something that made sense. And that feeling, it was rare. Still, not every moment was inspiring. There were nights filled with frustration, videos that flopped, uploads that glitched, ideas that looked brilliant on paper but fell flat in execution. Worse, there were days when he questioned if he was just fooling himself. Would he ever make it? Would anyone ever care? Or would he end up being another teenager with a failed YouTube dream? But somehow he kept going. And then came a turning point. One day he decided to do something completely different, something simple, something ridiculous. He filmed himself counting to 100,000. No edits, no cuts, no flashy graphics, just Jimmy sitting in a chair counting out loud for more than 40 hours straight. His friends thought he was crazy. The internet thought it was a joke, but Jimmy had a hunch. And he was right. The video exploded, millions of views, headlines, reactions, memes. People didn't just watch, they were amazed. Who would do something so absurd, so unnecessary, so extreme? Answer: a kid who understood that in a sea of creators, the only way to stand out is to do what no one else is willing to do. Counting to 100,000 was more than a stunt, it was a symbol. It showed the world, and maybe Jimmy himself, that he wasn't playing the YouTube game like everyone else. He wasn't chasing clicks, he was creating events. From that point forward, something shifted. Jimmy started pushing himself harder, testing crazier ideas, filming longer, more intense challenges. He wasn't just trying to go viral anymore. He was trying to redefine what a viral video could be. And behind every new upload was the same kid. The kid who used to get 10 views. The kid who filled notebooks with strategy. The kid who studied thumbnails like they were textbooks. The kid who failed quietly, over and over again. Until one day, he didn't. But the truth is, Jimmy wasn't famous yet. Not really, not how we know him now. There were still sleepless nights, still doubt, still moments where the numbers didn't make sense. He had no team, no brand deals, no studio, no editor, just a young man and his obsession. But something was coming. The lessons he'd learned from all those failures, the algorithms he studied, the trends he tracked, it was all about to pay off. Because the kid who counted to 100,000 was about to start giving away $10,000, then $100,000, then $1 million. But that's a story for the next segment. Segment 3, Going viral. When everything changed, it didn't happen all at once. Fame, real fame, the kind that follows you into airports, trends on Twitter, and fills your inbox with brands begging for attention, doesn't always arrive with a clear announcement. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a single moment that only seems big after it echoes across the world. For Jimmy Donaldson, known online as MrBeast, that moment had already happened. He had uploaded a video of himself counting to 100,000. It was absurd. It was brilliant. It was unexpected. But most importantly, it worked. Millions watched, not because it was flashy or funny or professionally made, but because it was something no one else had the patience or the madness to attempt. In a world built for 8-second attention spans, MrBeast had held people captive for hours, and in doing so, he'd made a statement. I'll do what no one else will just to entertain you. That became his brand, even before he had a brand. But one viral video is never enough. Jimmy knew that the internet is fickle. One moment, you're everywhere. The next, forgotten. If he wanted to stay, I had to evolve fast. So he got back to work. This time, he didn't just upload videos, he planned events. He filmed himself reading the dictionary, then saying Logan Paul's name 100,000 times, then watching Jake Paul's It's Everyday Bro music video on repeat for 10 hours straight. They weren't just stunts, they were psychological traps, challenges that made people say, wait, he really did that? The titles were simple, the thumbnails were bold, the ideas were insane. And the views, they exploded. He wasn't just gaining subscribers, he was becoming a YouTube phenomenon. Within months, his channel grew from thousands of views to tens of millions. But going viral wasn't the end, it was just the beginning, because now the pressure had changed. Jimmy was no longer a kid hoping for recognition. He had it. Now people expected more. More views, more extremes, more impossible ideas. And to deliver on that expectation, Jimmy did something most creators struggle with. He started building a team. He brought in childhood friends, Chris, Chandler, Carl, turning real-life relationships into on-camera chemistry. These weren't actors, they weren't scripted, they were just real, and people loved it. Viewers didn't just watch the challenges, they watched the friendships, the laughter, the subtle rivalry, the playful chaos. It wasn't a performance, it was a group of kids with a camera and a dream, and the entire world watching. But as Jimmy's ideas grew, so did the cost. Big videos required big budgets. Giving away $10,000 in a single video, not sustainable. Unless you believed in the long game, and Jimmy did. He took the money he earned from those early viral videos, every single dollar, and put it right back into the next one. No fancy cars, no private jets, no celebrity lifestyle, just bigger giveaways, bigger prizes, and bigger risks. That's when he started giving money to strangers, random people on the street, homeless shelters, delivery drivers, cashiers, small streamers. He'd walk up with a camera and hand them $1,000, $10,000, even a car. And people didn't just watch, they felt something, because the videos weren't about flexing wealth. They were about sharing it, about showing what money could do when used selflessly. I want to make the world a better place, he said in interviews, and I want to do it in a way that people actually want to watch. It worked, but behind the scenes the pace was brutal. To keep up with YouTube's algorithm and audience demand, Jimmy pushed himself harder than ever. He stopped thinking in days. He started thinking in uploads. Every video was a sprint. Every video was a gamble. And every video had to be bigger than the last. He He barely slept. He barely socialized. He ate fast food on editing breaks. His eyes were permanently glued to screens, but he didn't complain because this was his purpose. He wasn't trying to be a celebrity, he was trying to be the greatest creator on earth, and slowly the numbers began to reflect that. 1 million subscribers, then 2, then 5, then 10. Each milestone brought more eyes, more pressure, and more people asking, "Who is this guy and why is he giving away all his money?" The answer was simple: because he could, and because no one else would. But even as his fame grew, Jimmy remained oddly grounded. He didn't move to LA. He didn't hire a PR team. He stayed in North Carolina. He worked with his best friends. He stayed home. That decision, the choice to remain rooted in who he was, became part of his appeal. He was one of us, but with a camera, a vision, and the courage to go all in. But success, especially this fast, always comes with a cost. Behind the scenes, there were cracks beginning to form. The workload was crushing, the creative pressure exhausting, and the emotional toll of constantly giving without time to rest was starting to show. But he didn't stop. He couldn't, because Jimmy had a bigger plan, something that went beyond YouTube. He didn't just want viral videos, he wanted to build an empire. And that meant sacrificing things others take for granted: sleep, privacy, health, sometimes even joy. Because when the world expects greatness every week, you can't afford to break. Still, for now, the views kept climbing. The giveaways got bigger, the subscribers kept pouring in, and Jimmy kept pushing, from counting to 100,000, to giving away a private island, to recreating Squid Game with a $456,000 prize. MrBeast wasn't just going viral anymore. He was redefining what it meant to be a YouTuber, not an influencer, not a vlogger, a filmmaker, philanthropist, strategist, and visionary, wrapped into one young man who used to upload gaming clips from his bedroom. The world had changed, and so had Jimmy. But beneath the success, there was still that same kid, the one who used to whisper into a file mic at 2 a.m., the one who studied thumbnails like scripture, the one who never felt like he fit in, until the internet gave him a place. And while the world watched the viral hits, the giant stunts, the massive giveaways, few noticed the cost. Few asked how much energy it took to keep going. Few understood that giving everything to the world sometimes means losing part of yourself. That part of the story, we'll get to that soon. But next, the empire begins. Segment 4, Millions in Minutes, the giveaway formula. At first, people thought it was a stunt, just a one-time thing, a random, generous video to grab views and spark conversation. Giving $10,000 to a homeless person. It was the kind of title that made you pause. Not because it was flashy, but because it made you ask, wait, he actually did that? Yes, he did. And not just once. That video was the beginning of something much bigger, something that would define MrBeast's identity, his brand, and ultimately his legacy. But the truth is, it didn't start with money. It started with a feeling Jimmy Donaldson had carried for years. That YouTube wasn't just about entertainment, that it could be about impact, that he could give back and people would still watch. That idea, it would change everything. In the early days, Jimmy's giveaway videos were modest, a few $100 here, a few thousand there. But the reactions, they were priceless. You could see it in people's eyes, the disbelief, the shock, the overwhelming gratitude. It wasn't just a game or a prank. It was real, life-changing, real. And Jimmy realized something powerful. The best content isn't about what you take, it's about what you give. He leaned into that truth and never looked back. Soon, giving money away became the core of his channel, but not in a boring, repetitive way. Jimmy knew better than anyone. Giving had to evolve. It had to be surprising, entertaining, strategic, scalable. So he did what no one else dared to do. He started investing all of his YouTube revenue back into his next video. Every dollar earned went right back out. Most creators would keep the profits, buy better gear, upgrade their life. Jimmy, he doubled down on his audience. If a video earned $10,000, the next one might give away $20,000. If it made $50,000, the next challenge would offer $100,000. I want to make the best videos possible, not the most money possible, he said. And people noticed, because it wasn't just generosity, it was risk, real risk. Jimmy was taking his own earnings, sometimes his entire monthly revenue, and putting it on the line, hoping each video would perform well enough to fund the next. There was no safety net, no backup plan, only faith and obsession. The formula began to form, a giant, impossible-sounding prize, something that makes people stop scrolling, a simple, easy-to-understand challenge. Anyone could follow the rules. Genuine people as contestants, friends, subscribers, strangers, emotionally satisfying payoffs, not just cash, but stories that felt good. Last to leave the circle wins $10,000. I gave my 100 million subscriber a private island. I bought everything in a store and then donated it. These weren't just videos, they were events. And Jimmy knew it. He started designing his content like movie scripts, building tension, emotional arcs, visual spectacle, but without actors, without fakes, just real people and real money. To keep up, he built a production pipeline that rivaled Hollywood. Writers, producers, editors, set builders, coordinators, all working around one idea: make the next video bigger than the last. And somehow, they did, over and over again. One video hit 10 million views in hours. Then another did 20 million in a day. Some crossed 100 million in a week. The titles became legendary. The thumbnails became art. And the giveaways, they reached a scale no one had seen before on YouTube. He gave away cars, houses, private jets, an entire island. And in one milestone video, he gave away 1 million in a single day. But here's the part that most people don't see. None of that was effortless, none of it was easy, and none of it came without pressure. Because the bigger the prize, the higher the risk. If a video failed to perform, he wouldn't just lose views. He could lose everything. Jimmy operated at the edge of creative burnout and financial collapse, constantly betting on himself, on his team, and on his audience to show up. "We live or die by the next upload," he once said. That's not drama. That's how MrBeast operates. And yet, even under that pressure, Jimmy refused to cut corners. He didn't fake reactions. He didn't stage giveaways. He kept everything real, even when it would have been easier and cheaper not to. Why? Because trust was everything. And Jimmy understood that better than most. If his audience stopped believing, the whole empire would crumble, so he protected that trust like gold. When fans asked if the giveaways were legit, Jimmy didn't get defensive. He invited reporters to verify. He shared behind-the-scenes footage. He let the truth speak louder than any rumor, and the truth was simple. He gave away more money than any individual creator in YouTube history. And he did it because he believed in it. But there was another layer too, one even deeper. The giving wasn't just about content. It was about purpose. because Jimmy knew something about pain, about struggle, about feeling like you don't belong. And when he saw that giving a car could change a family's life, when he saw a homeless man cry after receiving a check, when he watched a small streamer go from 2 viewers to 20,000 in minutes, it hit something inside him, something real. Giving became therapy, a way to channel everything he'd endured, every failure, every doubt, every lonely night on YouTube, into meaning. And yet, even that has a cost, because giving at that scale becomes its own kind of pressure. Soon, people didn't just hope for a giveaway, they expected one. The comment sections filled with please, please help me. I need money for my mom's surgery. I'm poor, pick me. And that broke Jimmy's heart. Because no matter how much he gave, it was never enough. The algorithm didn't slow down. The audience didn't shrink. And the responsibility only grew heavier. But Jimmy kept giving, not for clout, not for likes, but because it had become part of who he was. Not MrBeast, the creator, but Jimmy, the person. The kid who used to whisper into a cheap mic in his bedroom now stood at the center of a media empire, surrounded by lights, cameras, and million-dollar prizes. And yet, deep down, he was still that same kid, curious, focused, determined to do what no one else would, because while others built content to get rich, he built content to give it all away, and in doing so, he created something the internet had never seen, a new kind of generosity, a new kind of entertainment, a new kind of legend. But as the stakes grew, so did the question. How long can someone give so much but before they break? That answer, like everything else in Jimmy's story, wouldn't come easy. And in the next chapter, we begin to see what happens when pressure, fame, and the drive to give collide behind the scenes. Segment 5. The pressure to be bigger, growth, and burnout. He had millions of subscribers. His videos were averaging tens of millions of views. The giveaways were reaching numbers no one had ever attempted before. MrBeast was everywhere, on headlines, in trending charts, in the dreams of every aspiring creator. He was the gold standard, the benchmark, the proof that YouTube success could be both viral and meaningful. And yet, Jimmy Donaldson couldn't sleep. His mind wouldn't turn off. Not at night, not between videos, not even during filming, because once you set a bar that high, once you promise the world that your next video will be even more insane, even more generous, even more unbelievable, there's no going back. You have to keep climbing, even if the climb is destroying you. This is the part of the story most people never see. They see the thumbnails, the giveaways, the laughter, the stacks of cash, but they don't see the 3 a.m. meetings, the production nightmares, the reshoots, the endless editing revisions, the self-doubt that creeps in right before an upload goes live. Because at this level, the pressure doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. Jimmy had built something incredible, but he'd also built a machine that didn't run unless he did, and the machine was always hungry. Every upload had to be bigger, every concept had to be smarter, every thumbnail had to pop harder, and if it didn't, the numbers would drop, the revenue would shrink, the next giveaway wouldn't be possible. So Jimmy worked harder, he slept less, he obsessed more. He stopped thinking about anything else. Friends, relationships, hobbies. There was only the channel, only the videos, only the mission. And slowly something began to crack. His body started to rebel. Migraines, fatigue, constant exhaustion. There were days he couldn't focus, nights he couldn't rest, weeks where he felt like a ghost walking through his own life. People around him started to notice. His friends, his team tried to help. They offered to take on more work, to slow down the pace, to make things easier. But Jimmy couldn't let go, because the fear was louder than the exhaustion. What if he stopped uploading? What if the next video didn't perform? What if everything he'd built vanished overnight? He'd seen it happen to others, creators who burned bright and disappeared just as fast. And he couldn't let that be him. So he kept pushing, even as the burnout grew deeper, even as the joy started to fade, even as success began to feel like a weight instead of a reward. The internet celebrated his uploads, but Jimmy didn't feel like celebrating because behind every massive video was a mountain of stress. Behind every headline was a week of chaos. Behind every fan comment saying, "You're amazing," was a voice in his head saying, "You're not doing enough." The irony was brutal. He had spent years building a channel based on giving. But now, it felt like he had nothing left to give himself. Still, the grind continued. A new video, new idea, new twist. MrBeast had become more than a creator. He was now a company, an empire. There were dozens of employees, massive sets, full-scale productions, and they all relied on Jimmy's vision. That pressure, it wasn't just personal anymore. It was corporate. He wasn't just keeping the audience happy. He was keeping the lights on, paying salaries, managing logistics. It became harder to experiment, harder to play, harder to feel free. The videos were bigger than ever, but Jimmy felt smaller inside, and yet he still didn't stop. Why? Because giving up was never an option. He remembered the early days, recording in his bedroom, uploading to 20 views, being laughed at by classmates, being told it would never work. He had proved them all wrong, and now he carried that identity with him, the kid who outworked everyone. But there's a cost to being the hardest worker in the room. It's isolation, it's health problems, it's waking up one day and realizing you don't know who you are without the hustle. That moment came quietly for Jimmy. No crash, no dramatic breakdown, just a slow creeping realization. I'm not happy. He had everything he thought he wanted, numbers, fame, impact, but happiness, peace? That was harder to find. He started asking deeper questions. What happens when your success becomes your prison? What happens when you build your dream and then it owns you? It wasn't a breakdown, it was a shift. Jimmy began talking more openly about burnout, about mental health, about the toll this level of creation takes, not to gain sympathy, but to tell the truth. Because if MrBeast, the most successful YouTuber in the world, could struggle with balance, then maybe other creators weren't broken. Maybe they were just human. And maybe so was he. That shift didn't mean slowing down. Not yet. But it did mean restructuring, delegating, building systems that could survive even if he stepped back. Jimmy started thinking long term. How to create without killing himself in the process. How to scale the mission, not just the channel. Because deep down, he didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be effective. He wanted to change lives. He wanted to show that kindness could be viral, that entertainment didn't have to be selfish, that creators could build empires based on impact, not ego. But he couldn't do that if he burned out completely. So slowly, piece by piece, he began reclaiming space. Sleep, health, time. It wasn't perfect, the machine still needed him, but now he was learning to say no, to pause, to breathe. And in doing so, he found something unexpected. A clarity. He remembered why he started, not for fame, not for money, but for fun, for purpose, for the joy of creating something real. That realization didn't fix everything. The pressure still exists, the stakes are still high, the hustle still burns, but now Jimmy understands the cost of greatness. And more importantly, he understands that even legends need rest. Because in a world that praises endless grind, it takes real strength to step back, to build not just content, but a life. Segment 6, MrBeast Inc., the brand, the team, the business. At first, it was just a kid with a camera, then it became a channel, then a trend, then a movement. But somewhere along the way, it became something else entirely, something bigger, sharper, more structured. It became a business, not the kind with suits and spreadsheets, not the kind that lives inside a downtown office tower. This was a new kind of company, a startup powered by passion, built with friends, and scaled with vision. MrBeast Inc. People often ask how Jimmy Donaldson built his empire, how one YouTuber went from counting to 100,000 in a dimly lit bedroom to running a multi-million-dollar media company. The truth? He didn't just think like a creator, he thought like a founder. And it started with one simple decision: I can't do this alone. Because when your videos involve buying out stores, giving away islands, and building custom arenas, you need more than just a camera and a dream. You need a team. So that's exactly what Jimmy built, piece by piece, like a startup founder assembling Avengers. But instead of hiring from agencies or elite networks, he looked close to home. He started with the people he trusted most. Chris, his childhood best friend, always down to try anything. Chandler, a shy, funny kid who stumbled into fame through random cameos. Carl, a creative spark with a contagious personality. Nolan, Tariq, and others, editors, producers, builders, problem solvers. They weren't professionals at first. They didn't come from film school or ad agencies. They were just kids who believed. And Jimmy gave them something powerful: purpose. He didn't just ask them to help, he gave them ownership. He made them part of the journey. Every video became a team effort. Ideas were thrown around like dodgeballs. Scripts were sketched out on whiteboards. Budgets were scribbled in notebooks. And together they built what no one had seen before: a friend group turned production studio. But as the ideas got bigger, the operation had to grow too. Jimmy began hiring behind the scenes, quietly at first, then at scale. He brought in video editors who could handle fast-paced, high-stakes content, project managers who could keep massive giveaways organized, set designers who could build real-life game show arenas, writers, camera ops, legal advisors, data analysts, and even a full logistics team. They weren't just making YouTube videos anymore. They were building mini blockbusters every week. Each shoot required planning that rivaled TV production. Dozens of moving parts, timelines that couldn't slip, safety protocols, legal clearances, brand negotiations, real people winning real prizes, and at the center of it all, still Jimmy, still the same guy, obsessing over thumbnails, titles, pacing, because even with a team of 100 plus, he never stopped being hands-on, never stopped tweaking, never stopped caring. But this wasn't just about growth. It was about building infrastructure. Jimmy realized something early. If I'm going to keep doing this for years, I need to make it sustainable. I need systems that work without me losing my mind. So he started developing standard operating procedures. He built templates for editing, formulas for pacing, storyboards for structure. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't creative, but it was necessary. Because creativity can thrive in chaos for a while. But businesses, they need structure, and MrBeast was now very much a business, but not just one. Over time, Jimmy launched an entire ecosystem. One, Beast Philanthropy, a separate YouTube channel focused entirely on giving back, without the need for sponsors or profits. He used its revenue to fund food pantries, natural disaster aid, housing initiatives. If we can feed 1 million people a year, why wouldn't we? 2. Feastables, a snack brand starting with chocolate that wasn't just a side hustle. It was a challenge to legacy food companies. With clean ingredients, fun marketing, and giveaways tied to purchases, Feastables became a brand that felt like a MrBeast video. And it worked. Feastables launched in Walmart, then Target, then worldwide. Jimmy wasn't just playing in YouTube's sandbox anymore, he was entering the real-world market. MrBeast Burger, a virtual restaurant concept that launched during the pandemic. Instead of building physical stores, Jimmy partnered with ghost kitchens across America, allowing fans to order MrBeast burgers through delivery apps. The result? Millions of orders. Over 1,000 virtual kitchens. Instant brand recognition without a single brick-and-mortar location. It was marketing genius, because every order felt like being part of the story. 4. International channels. To expand globally, Jimmy began dubbing his content into other languages, not just with subtitles, but with full voiceovers, professionally produced in Spanish, Hindi, Portuguese, and more. It unlocked massive new audiences, especially in non-English speaking countries. Suddenly, a video made in North Carolina could trend in Brazil, India, or Mexico. This wasn't accidental, it was strategy. Jimmy had become more than a creator. He was now an entrepreneur, a global brand architect, and a visionary CEO. But success at this scale creates new challenges. Every business unit required oversight. Every hire had to be vetted. Every decision carried weight, financially, legally, and emotionally. The stakes had never been higher, and Jimmy knew it. So he did what he always did. He studied, he read business books, met with tech CEOs, hired advisors, learned about supply chains, product margins, risk mitigation, leadership culture, because in Jimmy's mind, the goal was never to be just a viral star. The goal was to build a legacy, but even legacies need protection. So Jimmy began stepping back just a little from the front line. He delegated more, trained leaders inside his team, built redundancies, systems, and fallback plans, not because he was tired, but because he wanted to last. And yet, despite all of it, the channel didn't lose its soul. MrBeast videos were still fun, still chaotic, still filled with real people and real generosity, because Jimmy never forgot where it all started. A quiet kid with a camera in a bedroom filled with notebooks, trying to figure out how to make people care. And somehow he did. Not just for a video, not just for a moment, but at scale. He turned giving into content. He turned friendship into business. He turned failure into systems. And he turned YouTube into an empire. But the question still remained, when you've built everything you dreamed of, what comes next? The next chapter wouldn't be about money or views or even giveaways. It would be about legacy and the quiet cost of carrying it all. Segment 7, The Cost of Generosity, Health, Fame, and Loneliness. Everyone saw the numbers, billions of views, millions of dollars given away. One of the fastest growing YouTube channels in history. A brand so powerful it could launch chocolate bars, burgers, and global initiatives, all from a laptop and a camera. But behind that success was something harder to measure: the cost. Because generosity, especially at the scale Mr. Beast made it, comes with a weight, and Jimmy Donaldson felt every ounce of it. At a glance, it looked perfect. He had fans all over the world. He was working with his best friends. He was changing lives every week. He was living the dream. But reality doesn't live in thumbnails. It lives in the quiet spaces between uploads. It lives in the late nights when no one's around, in the silence after the cameras stop rolling, in the hotel rooms and edit bays and endless meetings that stretch past exhaustion. That's where the real weight lives, and Jimmy carried it for years. Because when your entire career is built on giving, it's easy to forget to give to yourself. The hidden pressure of fame. Jimmy never asked to be famous. He just wanted to make great videos. But the more he gave, the more people watched. And the more people watched, the more they wanted. The fans were loyal but also demanding. Every video had to top the last. Every giveaway had to be bigger. Every tweet, every post, every second in public, scrutinized, recorded, judged. There were no off days, no anonymity, no privacy. Going to the grocery store, risk of being mobbed, taking a vacation, accused of slacking off, uploading a video that only gets 30 million views instead of 80. Is MrBeast falling off? That's the pressure. Not just to succeed, but to sustain success infinitely. And Jimmy, being who he is, never wanted to let people down. So he worked harder. But fame doesn't feed you. It doesn't hug you when you're tired. It doesn't help when your mind is clouded and your body is aching, and the joy you used to feel starts to blur into obligation. At that level, you're no longer just a person. You're a product. And Jimmy felt that too. The health struggles. No one saw Jimmy, never used his health as a way to gain sympathy. He rarely even mentioned it. But for most of his adult life, he's battled with Crohn's disease, a chronic, painful autoimmune condition that affects digestion, energy levels, and overall quality of life. Some days it means nausea. Some days intense pain. Other days extreme fatigue that makes even thinking difficult. And yet he kept filming, he kept planning, giving, editing, building, because the schedule didn't stop for Crohn's. The audience didn't know or care that he was sick. The videos had to keep coming. And so Jimmy powered through. He filmed during flare-ups, worked through sleepless nights, skipped meals, ignored warning signs, smiled on camera. That's the part fans rarely saw, not out of dishonesty, but because Jimmy didn't want the focus to be on him. He wanted it on the people he was helping, on the missions he was funding, on the joy of giving, but inside the toll was real, and the more successful he became, the harder it became to stop. The loneliness of leadership. Being the face of an empire has its perks, but it can also be incredibly lonely. Because at the top, everyone looks to you for answers, for decisions, for stability, and that's a weight most people can't fully understand. Even with the team, even with friends, Jimmy often felt like he was the only one who could see the full picture. The only one awake at 3 a.m., worried about deadlines. The only one refreshing analytics, planning 5 videos ahead. The only one carrying the fear of failure, not just for himself, but for the dozens of people who now depended on him. That kind of responsibility is isolating. Yes, his team supported him. Yes, his friends were loyal, but leadership is often quiet and heavy. And over time, Jimmy began to feel that weight in his bones. He talked less. He stayed up later. He internalized everything because when your job is to give, you don't want to burden others by asking for help. When giving becomes an identity, what started as generosity eventually became expectation. Give away $10,000. Next time, make it $100,000. Then 1 million, then more. And Jimmy loved giving. But over time, he began to wonder, do people watch because they care about me or because they want what I can give them? That question haunted him because his generosity wasn't fake. It came from real places, real values, real empathy. But the internet is a noisy place, and sometimes people's kindness gets drowned out by greed. His inbox overflowed with requests: pay my bills, save my mom, help me, I'm desperate. And Jimmy wanted to help, he truly did, but he couldn't help everyone. And that reality broke his heart, because the very thing he was best known for, his generosity, had now become a source of guilt. No matter how much he gave, it never felt like enough. Why he keeps going. So why keep doing it? Why keep pushing, giving, building, uploading? The answer is simple and powerful, because Jimmy still believes in the mission. He believes that YouTube can be more than clicks, that content can be kind, that money can be a tool for good, not ego. He believes that if he shows the world what's possible, others might follow. He believes in inspiring kids to be generous, in teaching creators that success doesn't have to be selfish, in proving that you can win and still lift others up. That belief is what fuels him. Even on the hard days, even when the fame is loud and the loneliness is louder. Because Jimmy isn't just chasing views anymore, he's chasing meaning. And despite the cost, the health battles, the mental weight, the burnout, he keeps going. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. Because somewhere another kid is watching, another dreamer, another quiet, awkward teenager in a small town. And maybe, just maybe, that kid will believe it's possible to build, to give, to grow, to make a difference, not in spite of who they are, but because of it. Fame gave Jimmy a platform, but pain gave him perspective, and now he's using both to shape something greater than videos. He's shaping a legacy, but that legacy, it's still unfolding. And in our final chapter, we'll explore where it all leads. Segment 8, The Legacy in Progress, More Than a YouTuber. He could have stopped. By now, Jimmy Donaldson, MrBeast, has accomplished more than most people dream in a lifetime. He built one of the biggest YouTube channels in history. He's given away tens of millions of dollars. Cash, cars, homes, islands. He's helped fund surgeries, food pantries, schools and families in crisis. He's launched global brands and inspired millions to rethink what content can be. And yet, he's still just getting started, because for Jimmy, success was never the final goal. It was the foundation. The real mission, that's still in progress, and it goes beyond uploads, beyond thumbnails, beyond algorithm tricks and viral giveaways. What Jimmy is building now is a legacy. Beyond the camera, it's easy to look at MrBeast and see just a YouTuber. But Jimmy is no longer defined by a single platform. Yes, YouTube gave him his start. Yes, it shaped his style, trained his instincts, and rewarded his obsession. But now he's building outward, beyond the screen. Every video, every business, every act of generosity feeds into a larger idea. What if you could build a company around doing good and make it work? That's what MrBeast has become. Not just a creator, not just a businessman, but a case study in how impact and scale can coexist. He's not trying to be the richest, he's trying to be the most useful, and that's a different kind of ambition, education, philanthropy, and purpose. In recent years, Jimmy has shifted his focus bit by bit toward things that last. Beast Philanthropy, his non-profit YouTube channel, funnels ad revenue directly into real-world good, distributing food, disaster relief, housing projects, water wells. In early 2023, he helped fund 1,000 cataract surgeries to restore sight around the world, documented not as a flex but as a call to action. He has voiced support for education reform, for building systems that help young people learn practical skills, not just memorize facts. 9. Continues to explore ways to use his reach for environmental projects, hunger relief, and future facing causes. And through it all, one theme remains. Let's use content to solve problems. It's radical and it's working because for the first time in digital media, someone is proving that audience retention and real world results don't have to be separate goals. They can be the same thing. The influence generation. Jimmy's influence extends far beyond his own channel. He's mentored rising creators, invested in startups, openly shared data and advice. He's demystified the YouTube algorithm for millions. And maybe most importantly, he's changed the tone of the creator economy. Before MrBeast, most viral content focused on drama, controversy, or selfish spectacle. Now, more and more creators are building videos around kindness, challenges with meaning, and giveaway culture rooted in positivity, not ego. He didn't just build a brand, he sparked a mindset shift. He made it cool to care. That ripple effect may be his most powerful legacy. Because long after the views fade, long after the trends change, there will be thousands of creators whose DNA includes a little bit of MrBeast. Not just the format, but the ethic. Building for the future. Behind the scenes, Jimmy is still working constantly. He's planning bigger projects, building global infrastructure, reaching out to governments and non-profits. He's even floated ideas like creating a YouTube Creator Academy, launching educational entertainment for underfunded communities, partnering with global health organizations to scale impact, expanding MrBeast Burger and Feastables as self-sustaining engines that fund more giving. None of this is theoretical. He's already in meetings, already signing deals, already laying the groundwork. Because for Jimmy, the end game isn't about being the biggest YouTuber ever. It's about building a model that survives him, a system that keeps helping people long after the camera stops recording. And yet, he's still Jimmy. Here's what people forget. Behind the empire, behind the team, behind the brands and giveaways, there's still a young man in his 20s. Still that kid who used to record videos at 2 a.m. Still the teenager who felt anxious, out of place, and unseen. Still the quiet kid in the back row dreaming of something no one understood. And even now, after all the fame, all the success, all the headlines, Jimmy remains deeply human. He gets nervous, he second guesses, he feels overwhelmed, he worries about making the wrong choice, but he keeps showing up. Not because it's easy, not because it's expected, but because he believes in storytelling, believes in audience connection, believes in generosity as a form of rebellion. Because in a world built on competition and scarcity, MrBeast built something different. He built a channel of abundance. And for millions of people, that channel didn't just entertain them, it restored their faith. The legacy is still being written. So what do we say about MrBeast? Is he a YouTuber? Yes. but also a philanthropist, a founder, a strategist, a visionary, and a friend to millions. But more than any title, he is a reminder that you don't need to be born famous, that you don't need permission to dream. That obsession, when paired with integrity, can become a force for good, and that one person with a camera and a purpose can still change the world.